Welcome to welcome everyone, all the speakers, all the attendees, and everyone who will listen to this session later on social media, YouTube channel, or in any other forums of discussions on this challenging topic, the leadership of the future. And we are really hosting as Eco-Civilization this topic to challenge the leadership. Why? Simply you look around, and I think I almost don't need to say anything else. On every level of our existence, we are today challenged and invited to imagine the society we really truly want to live. Because somehow, whoever imagined the society we live now, obviously is a person of the past. And we got to challenge that. We got to start shaping something that feels right to us and to everybody who is co-creating this momentum. In order to really place it within what's been going on for the last 5 years within the movement, eco-civilization movement globally. It's been 5 years now in April. And especially we're very happy to collaborate so well with Living Cities Earth Global Network. And we hope to continue to really learn how to engage within different networks, cross-pollinate, and hopefully together build and create more than each of us can do individually. So the co-creators of this year of Leadership Challenge, which is new for our sessions, which we've been conducting now for the last 5 years, is that we invited different networks to come along for the same reason as I mentioned before. And besides Living Cities Earth, I'm really happy to also mention the G100 network, which Eco-Civilization is part of, and our dear colleague, Dr. Marin Truini, who is leading the global networking section within these G100 projects, and trying to achieve something similar, as I mentioned before, learn how to collaborate well without expecting somebody to follow or to be in front of you, but to really co-create and together be able to deliver more than each of us can do on its own. Dr. Andrea Codrin, founder and director of Quintown. She's been very active in co-shaping global understanding of how to really deal with people in different situations, not only in corporate views, but in any kind of communities, and focusing on developing new models that would recognize the importance of intangible characteristics of human engagement, especially focusing on the relationships, the quality of relationships, and importance that relationship brings to the any kind of organization or community. And she will be one of our hosts in the next one. So these three exceptional leaders, of course, Lev Gordon, I don't need to introduce to speakers, but maybe to the audience, who is one of the founders and initiators of Living Cities Earth. And also a very dedicated person to get the global collaboration working. What has been the initial challenge? I'm not going to go too much into the background, but obviously the world that we live today has emerged out of different community frameworks. One very genetic Earth ecosystem, which I call Nature One, then human-made ecosystems, including cities and villages and any other man-made structures, and which were so far all physical. And more important, the third emerging world, which we also created, and we can no longer ignore it, but learn how to incorporate and learn how to be an important tool, not a goal, for our future development, which is the virtual ecosystem. And of course, each of these generic, human-made, and human-made virtual have its own specific rules, require a special set of skills, and also structures within which we engage. So what are they? What is this good leadership, good collaboration of the future within those three worlds? We are yet to learn. And hopefully today's session will contribute to that. That's why we picked this topic, because it directly helps us to understand better potential structure of the future societies, which will no longer be based on the classical functional elements that all states currently consist of, but maybe just this is one of the views, and we hope at least to challenge people that they can imagine again the structure of the society as well, not only the behavior and not only the competences, but also the structure itself. And we see that the leadership challenge is very, very close to and defined by who the beings are, who are we, what is our level of consciousness, what kind of relationship we engage each other with. And of course, it has then, these kind of decisions have a huge impact on the way how we co-shape the land that we live on, societies within which we organize ourselves, and of course, how we create our understanding, awareness, and overall consciousness stage within which we continue to emerge. So a very important topic. So to formulate the purpose of this year of leadership, raise the awareness, challenge the concepts, dare to go beyond, and imagine and practice. And of course, share, as we do every month here at Zoom sessions within Eco-Civilization. So without further ado, I would dare to say that the new civilization paradigm is around the corner, if we want it or not, and I hope we will co-create it. Otherwise, somebody else will. Because as we know, everything that exists is a dynamic system, and only those that are active co-shape its structures, its stages, and different holograms within which we coexist. So new mindset will seek new organizational structures. We are invited to imagine. The existing leadership styles are being seriously challenged. We are invited to rethink. So let's focus. Let's focus on what does it mean to lead in the time of emergence, in the time of constant change and unpredictable actions like VUCA world. How do we go about? Is there a need for new competences, or do we just need to use our existing what's better? Are there new leadership styles and roles emerging, or we just need to understand those that exist better and deploy them better? Can one learn how to lead in the time of emergence? Is it leadership as a concept even still needed? Does the concept of emergence, that is the essence, that one of the basic behaviors of nature, does nature need leadership? Maybe we should try at least to recognize it, if it exists at all. And so do we mimic the nature? Or is there something unique in humanity to augment the Earth's natural behavior? And can we actually imagine delivering new reality, or we will just improve the existing ones, which might not lead to prosperity? So with that in mind, I already said everything that's been going on around Leadership Challenge will be published in a book, or if not by co-authors or authors themselves, we will make summaries and share what we've learned. And the next session on Leadership Challenge will be on September 3rd, led by Andrea Kudrin, what defines a new leadership and new leadership roles. Every second week, we also organize another series of discussions, which is closely related to the leadership, even though it might not appear at the first glance, which is the year of mental health. And the next session will be in August 27th. Well, that's all from my side. So I'm really honored and happy to greet you all. And Leo, now it's the time for you, all our guests, and I'll be listening very carefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Violetta. Thank you very much. I hope our session today will be a source of inspiration, as well as a little bit of maybe useful knowledge for all of our, both our speakers, because we learn from each other and from the circumstances, as well as for everybody who attends today on August 6, 2025, and to everybody who will be watching the recording bits and pieces, which we'll distribute widely across our planet. So welcome everybody. And before we dive in, and I'll quickly introduce our speakers as we move on, most likely I will introduce each one of you before passing, the word to you. I want to share something very personal, and it's also about new leadership or leadership for the modern world. Actually, this session from Leadership Challenge to Future Leadership, Future Leaders was scheduled to happen in early July, I believe July 7th. And me as moderator, as young people say today, I fucked up. The reason I fucked up, I'm very bad in structuring preparation things. So I promised to Marina, for example, that I will start inviting everybody 2-3 weeks in advance, which I didn't. And then I contracted COVID while being on a trip in Europe, and my mind sort of disappeared. The focus of attention shifted. I was hardly alive, and I missed the whole, preparation time. And then, of course, this session didn't take place. And I thought, okay, I'm not a reliable person. I cannot do anything serious. Violeta and everybody else will tell me, Lev, you are not reliable. We will never work with you again. Go and do something. So I had this fear in my, psyche and everything. And then we spoke with Violeta and Alexander. Alexander was very grateful because he prepared the presentation, as always on time and, perfect. So I felt very bad and, shame and all those, emotions. And then I received such a beautiful support from both of them. So Violeta and Alexander, I want to thank you now, because I feel this is also part of this new leadership. We could use people like me as the tools to get to the goals, and if they're not reliable, just take them off. Or we could try to uplift. And the words you shared with me at the time, they were so supportive. Maybe it was part of my healing process as well. So I want to bring this example, very personal. So sorry if it's a little bit irrelevant to some of us, but I feel that being human, as we solve our challenges and go around our tasks together, is important. And I felt that there was real grace, what Ferial often talks about, to have grace in each other and to really to uplift each other when we miss our goals and we are imperfect. So working with imperfection is in people, I believe, is part of this new leadership paradigm, but let's explore it all together. So welcome everybody. We have an amazing panel today, and I'm grateful for everybody who has responded. We have people from North America, South America, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, Africa, and even parts of Asia today. So 9 countries represented in the panel speakers sort of group. And I saw that we have people from all over the world among our participants. So thank you again for your time, for your attention, and everybody who will be watching the recording. Welcome again. I will start right away with a very simple thing. Let's go around the circle. I will name one after another our distinguished speakers. And I want to also say that we will not give the perfect answers today. And this is not the point. We're exploring this issue, important issue, which Violeta already highlighted. Do we need a leadership, right? How do we manage with our modern times on the personal, individual level and dimension? How are we doing on a group and sort of collective, organizational level, communities, cities? How are we doing on the ecosystemic level, cities, bioregions, and the planet overall? Are humans capable to face the issues which emerge in our VUCA, BANI, and Alexander knows the third acronym, brittle, I think, brittle word, so changing, uncertain, etc., etc. So let's explore what are the challenges of today. And again, it's not that we'll cover all the aspects, and many people in the audience already know definitely better than me how the world is looking up today. But we want to hear different voices from different geographies, different social stratas. And I would like, if I could, start with Paddy. Paddy comes from the southernmost point among the speakers today, because she is in Cape Town, I believe, right? Or Johannesburg, or Cape Town, I guess, in the very, south of South Africa. Right, South Africa, you could say. Paddy, what are the challenges you see? And please choose, you could talk about individual, organizational, ecosystemic level, or focus on either one of those. And then I will pass it on to other speakers today. And maybe 2-3 minutes would be a good time allocation. Thank you.
Thank you. Just having come in from an organization, I'm filled with the challenges of leadership at the moment. I'm rushed in here to get on time. Violetta, I thank you so much, everyone, for having these conversations because they're continuous and they're really, really important. I loved what you said about does nature have a leader? And you know, that really struck me because the challenge this morning amongst a group of corporate leaders was their significance, the sense of identity. So I was thinking hugely about the challenges, and I also dropped a post. I got so annoyed by our news with the corruption that was going on in the leadership and going, what is it? I mean, of course, I have answers. I have theories that I can apply. I have experience that I apply. So when I ask the question, what is it that corrupts our leaders, or what is it that makes a good leader? I have a theoretical answer. But actually, when we get to the heart, when we ask at the heart of that question, what is it that requires us to train? I don't think it's as leaders. I think we have to train as human beings. I don't think somehow, well, I do think. I think a lot. I feel a lot. I feel a lot around this inner development, the capacities, and not everybody to recognize that just as in nature there are the different sizes, the different structures, the different beauties, and the imperfections that you mentioned, Liv, these great imperfections of this deep inner core, which is our fragility. And until we recognize this deep fragility in each of us, and this risk of co-creating something together without trying to be the most significant one, to be the oak tree or the mountain, but to understand that that simple pebble or the stone is just as important as the seed. It's the question comes back to myself as well, is what does it mean for me to be a leader? And as a leader of an organization over 20 years or so, my own personal journey has been very, well, of course, fascinating, but not so much fascinating as it's been important to have that mirror back onto myself to go, what are the projections? What are these introjections that I have? What is it I'm trying to be? And how do I listen and listen deeply? So we come back to a core of any kind of leadership. It's a very individual matter, and it's a collective matter, and it combines everything. And until we settle something inside of this fragile human beingness, and I'm not promoting the Anthropocene over any other part, I think we have gone into a hubris of how powerful and how amazing we are. But also at a very heart level to connect with our core. So I'm going back to that thing of becoming human again, humane. What do we need to relearn that keeps us in the humility and the courage of stepping into our own humanity? And that is a moment and to moment practice that we all fall unconscious to, because something in us has triggered my nervous system into an overdrive of I've got to survive, or I need to collaborate, or I need I need to affiliate, I need to achieve. So I don't think there's something new. I think we have to go in and with all the other things we're doing, continue that inner work.
Paddy, thank you. Thank you very much. It's amazing. When I was listening to Violetta in the beginning, I thought everything I've learned in my 51 years, or at least 80% of what I learned, Violetta was able to put into some key points in under 5-7 minutes. And now, Paddy, you came up and you shared some things which are so deep that, I'm also rethinking even who I am, what the world I'm living in. And with this, I would like to pass the baton to another person who is really looking deeply. And Alexander, I want to pass it on to you. You wrote about learning our not humanity, but humanity, right? More than humanity now. And it's not only about, of course, men and women, but all kinds of dimensions that, living beings bring into the world. So what's your perspective on the challenges we face? Any comments from you? Greatly appreciated.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to share a few things later that get more into it. So I don't want to take up too much time now. Just a couple of comments on already how powerful this engagement is. And this is where hope lies. Violetta, you began by saying, anyone who looks around now can see that leadership is in trouble, that we are in troubled times. But I'm looking here and I see that it's thriving. The expression, we are just here. You're right. We look a little bit further and there are problems in the world. But the expression, we are the ones we've been waiting for. And I don't mean like this is a club and it's us and we're special. Quite the opposite, actually. We are all part of this, as Patty was saying. It's a distributed frame, which is, again, how does nature lead? Much like that. You look in an ecosystem and you look for the keystone species. And in a forest, for example, you could say, oh, the keystone species in a forest got to be the trees. No, the keystone species is the one that if you remove it, the ecosystem collapses, right? Well, frankly, it's not just one species. Usually it's a combination, but there are keystone species. And often it's the ants, which is interesting in a forest, for example, depending on the forest. But the point is, we are here and we are the ones we've been waiting for. Those who are listening, those who are participating, those who will see this later, we are the ones, but we're not waiting anymore. See, I like that idea because it's not a time that we need to be saying, okay, well, let's get everything right. And once we have all of our ducks in a row, then maybe we should do something. But Lev, your example that you gave earlier about, okay, you were going to do this earlier and that wasn't the right time and it didn't work because you were out of it and now we're doing it. This is the right time. And I think that's part of flowing with it. And that's the way nature works as well. If there are obstacles, it reconnects. So I think the last point I want to make here so that I can also give this to others who can talk because I'm interested in saying more, but I want to listen first. And but that comes back to some things that Patty was saying and that again, Violetta asked about how does nature lead. Also, it has to do with this idea of shifting this very Western patriarchal frames. And that's why I put, we need to move away from just humanity, which are about now the incentives that build for strident individualism and self-righteous independence. Well, that's not the way nature works. And yet, that is the way our economic system and our political systems are pushing us into those positions where we have those individual maximization. Nature doesn't work that way. It works with joint optimization. It's a different frame. And when you understand that all points are the center in a holographic universe, in a hologram, all points are the center. And I like my college physics teacher demonstrated this beautifully by taking a balloon and blowing it up just halfway, and then putting dots on the balloon, black though with a Sharpie, not the kind of Sharpie that punctures the balloon, but a color thing. So he got the dots on the thing, and then there were dots all over, and then he kept blowing it up, and the balloon expanded, and he asked, which point is the center? Wow, that was impossible to say. He said, from the point of view of any of the points, all the other points are moving away from it equally. So each point appears to be the center. And that's okay. We can all be the center in a way where what we do matters. But we also understand that it is through an engagement with all the other points that it forms the whole. So it's a different framing, this holographic framing of things, rather than the pinpoint, where's the top? And that's not the way nature, it's not the way the universe is. It is a holographic universe. So that's cool. And With that, I pass it back to you, Lev.
Thank you. And we could definitely see that you are related somehow to the systems theory and systems thinking. Alexander was the chair of the Society, International Society for System Thinking, right? And every time you look into the issues, I feel that there is this systemic sort of holographic almost perspective. And from this, I would like us to really focus on the human dimension, which is only part of, the whole picture. And when we look into the world, indeed, people on the screen, I think we see about 10 people more or less, all of us. I really love each one of you. And I wrote even in our chat that I love these people. That's true. And we feel we also have some issues, of course, sometimes tensions, etc. But overall, we feel okay. But if we look out in the world, there are wars. I think last year there was 27 wars on the planet. There is a lot of famine in different regions, many other issues on the human level, as well as destruction of big ecosystems. I will not go into the details. We have other people who could do it much better than me today. And look at Cretan, for example. He will talk about perhaps ecosystemic issues. There are issues in the corporate world. And Matt later, who is also working with leaders in large multinational companies, I will ask him to cover this dimension. Other issues with young people and young generations, you bet, quite a few. I'm not talking about the rate of suicides in some countries, etc. But Peter and Robert will talk more about the human dimension. But Peter, I'll ask him later to cover a little bit some issues with the youth. And I'll ask Marina to bring it all together from the integral perspective on all the three dimensions. And Ferial, who is one of the leaders of working with communities, I will kindly ask you to look into how communities feel today. Are they all empowered? Are they all sort of all those things? But before we dive there, I want to go into the human dimension. And one of our speakers today, Robert Fisher, he's traveling through the Eastern Europe, but his sort of main profession is a psychiatrist, right? Psychoanalyst. And Robert works with people in some of the most privileged cities in the world, like Bern, the capital of Switzerland, which is a very wealthy city and very well, established from the ecosystemic, caring about the nature, having great infrastructure, etc. But I think there might be some issues in the human dimension sometimes, with the sense of purpose as well as any other. So, Robert, if you could kindly share, how do you see where humans, how do you see human dimension in our map of challenges in modern world?
Yeah, good morning, good noon, good afternoon, good night to everybody. Yes, right now I'm in a completely different country than where I live usually. About 15 or 20 years ago, I had a kind of crisis in my life where I thought how these challenging things are happening in the world and what is really needed. And I didn't have an answer in the first moment to this. What I did, I went to a vision search in nature and letting myself drift by inner and outer dynamics, walking in the nature with the question, what is needed in the world? And I don't know where this sentence came from, but it popped up in me, the sentence, what is important and what is needed is that we in our heart, we feel connected to the whole world, that our heart resonates with all what is happening in the world and feels embedded in the world. And I had to, my breath first stopped for a while, getting this message, and then I felt, okay, this is just a sentence, sounds simple, but has a very deep meaning. And I knew that I was not enough in resonance with the world. And I was quite sure that I'm not the only one who is not. And I want to engage for this, to refine our connection. And I say, especially in the heart, because mentally many of us are extremely clever, and it's not enough to be clever. And we have then this dissonance that we know everything and we don't live correspondent to what we know. About a few years ago, I created a new seminar, healing seminar for bonding, human bonding issues, early bonding issues. And I realized that a lot of deep pains and trauma came to the surface in this group. It was really very dense. And seeing this, feeling this, I immediately felt it's exactly the same what I observe in the outside world. So the inside world has a big correspondence to the outside world. Wars, climate changes, nature destruction, and so on. And for me, it's very clear that the inner healing work and the outer healing work have to shake hands together and have to go together so that maybe we as humans can contribute to a world in which life can go on. This would be a very deep wish of mine. Yeah. Thank you, Lev.
Thank you, Robert, for bringing the inside and outside together, as well as our mind and our heart. And I would like to pass it on to Matt. Matt works as an executive coach sometimes for leaders of some of the largest multinational companies in the world. And I'm sure that some of us or some people in the society for sure definitely have issues with how the corporate world have been influencing and what kind of impact they had on the world. I worked in multinationals myself a long time ago. I saw caring people who really take wise decisions, but maybe different multinationals have different strategies and policies. So, Matt, if you could focus on this dimension, what kind of issues and challenges you see in leadership in the corporate dimension? And of course, cover any other issues you would like to touch upon. Thank you.
Thank you, Lev. Well, as Robert was talking, excuse me, as Robert was speaking, I just thought of somebody I just was working with this afternoon before our session. And in this, we think, we often look up and we think that leaders have the power to change things. And in many ways, people in high positions are more hamstrung than we are. Because even if somebody's a boss, they have a boss. Even if you're the CEO, you have stakeholders like shareholders to be concerned about. And everybody has their insecurities. Everybody has their challenges. Everybody has their overwhelm. And it doesn't matter where you are, potentially. Where you are in society, you can be prey to this. So I think what every one of us has to consider is what can we do? And it begins with big change, begins with small habits of mind, habits of behavior, ways of seeing the world, opening ourselves up to different perspectives, different perceptions. And I think one of the key things that I try and promote is empathy and getting into other people's shoes, understanding other people's perspectives. Now, the other person's perspective isn't the whole thing, but nor is yours. But the more perspectives that we can integrate into our own understanding of the world, the better off we're going to be. And the more we're going to be able to recognize how we're interconnected with one another and how we're interconnected with the environment. I mean, it's so simple. We take it such for granted that we wouldn't exist without a functioning environment, nature feeds us, nature nurtures us. We live thanks to the bounties of the earth, and Patty mentioned hubris earlier. The hubris of thinking that we can go to Mars and colonize Mars and give up everything that we have here. It's an absurd fantasy, in my opinion, and when you think of all the effort that would be required there, if we could only do just 1% of that effort to restoring in regenerating what we have on planet Earth, would have a much greater impact. So your question was about corporate leaders, but so I guess the message is corporate leaders are human beings just like we are. They are also limited in what they can do as individuals. The same with politicians, but they need to know what's important to us. They need to know what's important to customers, to constituents, and so it's up to every one of us as individuals to nurture our own sense of what's important and then share that with the rest of the world. Share that with your friends, not in a way that is forceful, but in a way that invites cooperation.
Every time I look, when we talk to Matt in Zoom, I look at this background. I don't know if it's natural or this sort of digital, but this tree behind Matt is about, it takes about half of my attention every time. So for me, Matt is always part of a broader ecosystem. And also, I will share, we met with Matt maybe a week ago in Switzerland, and he shared a very interesting observation. He likes to swim in Rhine, right, the river Rhine. And I asked him, so in winter as well, I asked him, how long can you swim during winter time? And he said, well, it's very easy. You take the temperature of the water, for example, 15 degrees, you can stay in the water for 15 minutes. If it's 10 degrees, you can stay there in 10 minutes. And they asked, but what if it's 5? He said, well, then you stay there for 5 minutes. So life sometimes could be very simple. And talking about the ecosystems and ecosystemic approach, one of the youngest sort of members of Living Cities Earth family is Kriton Arsenis. And Kriton joined us from our partner project called University for Earth, where together with Pavel Luksha, they're building a system and the culture of regenerative, civilization, very much like eco-civilization does. And it's amazing. When I looked at Kriton's picture first time, I saw a very young person, very young. I thought, wow, a teenager maybe, almost. And then when we met and when we learned about each other's, passes, I understood that Kriton has done more than I could do in many lifetimes. So Kriton, with your long experience being a member of European Parliament and driving the ecological sort of life regenerating agenda there, being a member of Greek Parliament and many other sort of organizations, but also with some amazing projects you ran on a global scale with Google, right? The map for the wild areas on planet Earth. So with all of your background, what are the main one or two challenges you see on the ecosystemic planetary scale? We'll talk about the solutions in the second part, but what really keeps you up at night, so to say? You need to switch on your mic.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lev, and Violet for organizing this and inviting. Well, if I had to choose, if there was something that can keep me up at night, I wouldn't be able to sleep any night because of course the issue of what's happening with life on the planet. If you see it with a logical mind, you will never sleep again. So what I can tell you, what keeps me sleeping at night? It keeps me sleeping at night, the fact that I do what I can. So I've been in very challenging social and environmental situations, having responsibility, elected or not, or just responsibility I took on by my endeavors and the teams that I was working with. I always could sleep at night when I felt like I was doing what I can. I know that it sounds very simplistic, but I always remember one charismatais say about the hummingbird and this little bird that in the middle of chaos, when the tree was burning, when the forest was burning, and all the big animals were looking without doing anything. And then this hummingbird took this small drop and threw it in the fire, and again back to the lake, back to the fire, and so on. And when the other animals asked it what it's doing, and it's meaningless what it's doing. It says that I'm not going to sit like the animals, just watching the forest dissolve into ashes. I will do what I can. And I think that's the most thing. That's leadership at any level, wherever you are, top or down, however you sit up, however you sit down. That's leadership, doing what you can, doing the best of what you can in that moment. Is it enough? We don't know. What we know is that, like usually, when we do what we can, we start meeting people that they also do what they can. And this meeting creates a momentum. Meeting people that are on the same level of commitment to life. It's what enables us to do change. And when we meet more and more people with an open heart, listening and talking from the heart, then things can change. And I believe that it is, we often try to do too much. I think another part of the recipe is to focus on the one thing we're mostly committed spontaneously to. Pick it up and run ahead like, I don't know is it the baseball players that they pick the ball and they run? So pick it up, and whatever happens, you take it there, and with the people you will find on the way, take it to the end as much as you can. This is my understanding of what works. So doing with the best that you can with a group of like-minded or like-hearted people, and focusing as much as you can, because there are so many needs in the world. And if we try to do everything, we won't be able. Focus on the issue you believe you can have a difference and make a difference as much as you can. That's leadership, based on my experience in life.
Kriton, thank you very much. And I want to focus on what has just happened as a life example of how we as quote-unquote leaders or human beings could act in different situations. So, a moderator of our session today, being me, have communicated the best way he or she could, well, in this case he. Guys, we'll have two parts of our discussion. In first part, we talk about the problems, the challenges. Then we have second part where we talk about our solutions. And then one of our speakers, Kriton in this case, he jumped pretty much, he said, oh, if we talk about challenges, I won't be able to speak, which was a beautiful metaphor, by the way. And really, there are problems in the world. We look all sort of good and smiling and happy, but there are issues. Even I'm sure in our personal lives, in our families, companies, communities, cities, everywhere. That's life, right? And then, so as a moderator or as a leader or anybody, I could have been a little bit, taken back sort of by, oh, I wasn't able to communicate to Cretans that first we talk about, challenges. Or I could have thought, wow, Cretan didn't hear me well enough, right? So I could have focused on problems, and it could have affected our relationship with Cretan openly or, indirectly, and then it would affect some other things we do together. But inside my mind, while I had those, considerations while Cretan was speaking, I also understood from the witnessing perspective, well, maybe Cretan choose to care about all of us because he's sitting right now in a wild area on a mountain. That's where he lives. And he told me that there is very limited connection and he could be, the service could disappear at any moment. So instead of going into two parts, he combined holistically all of his considerations in one beautiful statement. So instead of thinking, negatively about the situation, I chose to think about Cretan as a person who cares and who brings his holistic perspective to really serve each one of us. So Cretan, thank you very much, and thank you for helping me to work through some of my internal issues on the go. Thank you very much. And we'll come to some other solutions in the second part as well. Did I offend you by any way, by the way?
No, but just to be honest, I didn't do what you said. I just forgot the differentiation of the two. But really, there's no problem left. There are so many things to say about solutions that 3 minutes at the end won't be enough anyway.
And interesting, I will mention one more thing because it relates to the issue of modern leadership and all the other things. We met with Cretan and several other people recently in an off-site meeting, and we had some challenges there, including some emotional, you could say, crisis, right? Or almost half drama, right? And it didn't relate to Cretan, so he was sitting there observing 5 other people or 6 other people, going through some emotional challenges. And I thought, okay, now Cretan will say, guys, you're all crazy here. I will do my own thing. Go and organize your projects without me. But instead, Cretan was so generous. He said, what I felt was that you have established a psychological safety here. You could talk about different difficult things without really offending each other. Or that's something that I heard. So creating this psychological space, safety, right? And in politics, in corporate world, in communities, in our cities or anywhere is important. And when we established some of those city development initiatives, we learned to speak to city officials, for example, or regional administrators or all the other stakeholders in a what we call the psychologically safe space. And Marina knows a lot about it because she was the first, I think, in the world, counselor and advisor to the mayor on psychological well-being and happiness in the city. And I would like to ask Marina if you could jump in before Peter and Ferial and really share your perspective on what challenges we see today, but also how we could look at them from the integral perspective.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure and great honor to participate in today's meeting and see the faces of people whom I love and respect. And let me first of all share, maybe not only from my own perspective, but from the research findings which we have conducted during the last several months. So we conducted a huge set of interviews from 6 continents, from 14 countries. So about 3, maybe dozens of people took part in this survey, and we researched and we made a survey about the soul of the places and soul of the cities where people are living and what they experience, how they experience the place where they live. And the result of this research was a book which was published and which is presented in Amazon. So if it is possible, I will share the link to this book in our chat after my speech. So the main research findings were that, so to sum up everything which was already mentioned, the main problem is disconnectedness. So for example, we can speak about the disconnection with nature, which was mentioned by Cretan and by many others, that we are not feel and the part of nature, and we are disconnected from the non-human beings. And this problem of being the citizens, the residents of the city of concrete and metal and glass, without trees, without opportunity to breathe, without opportunity to connect to the life itself, it's a huge problem, for example, in China. If we are talking about the disconnection from other cultures and even from our neighbors, we can have the story of Israel with people who are living in silos. So people from Jewish culture are living with in the neighboring streets with the people from Arab culture, and they don't communicate because they have their own kindergartens, they have their own schools, their own shops, their own universities. So they don't communicate and living in the neighboring streets. And that's a huge problem in terms of how we feel, how we can be connected and how we feel connected to the human beings who are sort of nearby ourselves. So that's a huge problem, and we understand that this brings complications not only in the relationships of neighbors, but in the relationships of neighboring nations, neighboring cultures. And we experience a lot these problems not only in the in Israel, but in many other countries which we know experience the same problems with the reconciliation of tough conflicts. we also can say that we are disconnected from our past. And this is very acute problem for people of the indigenous cultures or traditional cultures, when people from South Africa or from indigenous people from Canada or from Aboriginal nations from Australia or New Zealand, they are witnessing that it is really important to understand their ancestry. It is very important to have the identity of their previous generations in order to reveal our talents nowadays. So in this case, this connectedness to our own culture, to our own past, to our own stories, traditions, history, it's hugely important to be fully alive and to be able to build relationships and to be leaders in our lives itself. And of course, Paddy mentioned disconnection, and Robert also mentioned about the disconnection with ourselves, disconnection from our bodies, because we have lots of problems, health issue problems and mental problems, mental health problems, because of being too much focused on AI technology, communicating online. We forget to go for a walk, we forget to come to the parks, we forget to breathe properly and to take care of our bodies. Disconnection emotionally, disconnection of from our predestination, from our inner calling, and Paddy also mentioned about this. And this disconnection, so this learned helplessness, very often caused by the power struggle, very often caused by our previous experiences when we couldn't achieve something. Of course, it suppresses our leadership capacities. And in this case, I would like to refer to our dear Alexander Laszlo and his syntonous alignment. So we need to restore, to be good leaders of our lives, to be good leaders for our planet and all other sort of systems between ourselves as individual and planet as the whole living being. It's really important to rebuild, remember, to become the new member of this connectedness with our own self, with our neighbors, with others people, with our nation, with our cultures, with the generations, past generations, and our future generations. Because if we are talking about the goods which we are creating for our young sort of generations, we also should think what people will receive from us tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. So connections with the past and with the future, and of course connection with the whole universe, connection of the whole being, and connection with the spirit, understanding with our inner core and with the this holographic nature of I would say holographic and nested structure of our whole system. So yes, connection, I think I also maybe combine the first and the second question, because disconnectedness is the first and the foremost problem which causes everything. And this was proven by our research throughout all the countries, all the nations, all the cultures, and different people of different income and different generations. And at the same time, we should say that restoring this connection, remembering who we are, rebuilding our identity as people, as a person, as a part of some people, as people who live on some places which we need to take care of, as planetarians. I think that that's the most important solution. I would love to share more, but I will stop now in order to be mindful about our own time.
Marina, I loved what you shared. Thank you very much. This issue of disconnectedness, and I'll comment on this in a second to come back to what you have said, but I want to bring the issue Kinini shared in the chat. Sorry if I mispronounced the name twice. He or she, again, sorry, I don't know whether it's male or female. To kindly share the copy of the chat, because it's so rich with all the different ideas and quotes, etc. So I guess we'll ask Gloria eventually, who has supported as eco-civilization team member, the whole sort of organization, to possibly send a copy of a chat to everybody who sends their emails as the participants and the speakers as well. Thank you, Kinini, and sorry if I mispronounced your name. Marina, you mentioned this, I think it's like a cornerstone issue of disconnectedness. And we often think, I'm not talking about the research you mentioned, but I mean regular people, we often think about disconnectedness between people, which often happens in families, communities, etc. but it's also disconnectedness within ourselves, right? What Robert mentioned. It's our inner world, which we then bring to our outer actions and relationships. And also disconnectedness from the nature, when we think, okay, we are important, but everything else just serves the human, quote unquote, interest. And those of us who haven't seen the website of Eco-Civilization, and I think it's ecocivilization.earth, right, Violetta? It has a beautiful set of principles, how we can move from past into the future. And one of them, I remember it by heart, it's moving from ego to eco, from our egocentric perception and way of life to ecosystemic sort of perception. And this is part of moving from disconnection to being connected to ourselves, to other people, and to the nature. As we move to Peter, and Peter has many different dimensions. He's a eco-intention practitioner and many other things he's doing in his life. But he's also now co-leading with several other people our Future Leaders program for young people worldwide. Peter, if you could kindly mention a couple of things. Why do you care about young people? What's so important there? Are there any challenges we're most likely aware or maybe not aware of? If you could bring it to our attention, please, and then we'll talk about solutions in the second part as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Lev. Yeah, and besides the roles that you mentioned, I'm also a father of a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old. So I think it's obvious why I care about young people. And I'm also a human being, and also because I'm so inspired by, I think all your examples, like Lev, yours in the introduction, but also from others of being human and doing our best to human well. I also want to start with a personal story. And that is when Lev invited me for this session, the first thing I wrote to him is, "Are you sure? Because there's others who can speak to this much more eloquently than I can." And Lev said, "Yes, I'm sure." And I trust Lev, so I show up. But I'm saying this because I think it's it's usually important to include all kinds of different voices, and not just the people who think they are experts, but also the people who don't think they are experts. If you talk about young people, like that's one of the voices that's very often not included in the conversation. So for me, talking about future leaders in the context of young people, that suggests almost as if these are the people who are going to be leaders in the future rather than the people who are leaders in the present. For me, it's always been, when we're talking about future leaders, for me, the young people are present leaders, and the older generations are also future leaders. So it's not something that comes with leadership is not something that is limited to certain people. And for me, like I really recognize for example, what Paddy said about the importance of going inside, like of what's happening inside of you, and like how Matt translated that to habits or actions. But it is not just an individual thing, right? It also, you can develop that if you're in a culture and in systems that support that. And I think that is for many young people who are growing up now at this time, that's a really big challenge. And I think it's one of the causes of all the mental health, and Lev, you mentioned suicides, and like if you're born into a society and you see that the world is going to direction that if you think about it, you can't sleep, and you're basically like forced into taking a job or like studying in an education system that it doesn't represent what you believe, and taking a job that you don't believe in, like that is extremely challenging, and that can cause people to disconnect. And I think what everyone agrees about is, like, if we talk about leadership, it is not individuals who are leaders, but it's more like distributed leadership. And maybe a useful concept to introduce is also agency. Like it's like, how can you, as I think a lot of young people feel like they're living in a world that is not as the way they want it to be, but they feel very powerless to change it. And to some extent, they are powerless to change it because all the systems that exist don't give them or make it extremely hard for them to first of all do what is theirs to do. I think in a way like the definition of leadership could be like do what is yours to do and create the conditions for others to do what is theirs to do, or help others to do what is theirs to do. And in that sense, I don't think we're creating at this point a very good situation for young people to have that agency and to play their role in alignment with what they feel called to do.
Wow, it's amazing listening to all of the voices who have already, shared their stories. I remember this metaphor from Alexander, I believe, about this balloon. Alexander, did you share? Right? And I see Paddy's, perspective, Robert perspective, Matt, Marina, Cretan, Peter, Alexander, Violetta, Lev, and we'll come to Feral in a second. It feels like each one of us definitely has our own way of seeing things and why they overlap. I learn from what every one of you is saying, and I understand if I'm truly attentive, right? As somebody mentioned, with my mind as well as my heart, Robert, Robert, mentioned this. I could not only learn, but I could deeply connect to each one of you. And then it's not just the voices on the screen from the computer, but it's some sort of, as Violetta also shared, there is this human dimension, infrastructure, physical dimension, and the virtual dimension. So somehow I feel that if I listen to you with my heart, even though we connect on this Zoom platform, I also feel connected on some subtle energetic level. Maybe it's my fantasy, of course, but I feel that we create this network of care about our planet, our civilization, all forms of life. And I deeply sort of thank all of us for this, including all the participants and listeners of our session and everybody who will connect with it later on. And before I go to Feral in a second, in a moment, a few seconds, I want to highlight one issue about the youth situation today. We've been looking, and I'm not a researcher, so we don't have such meaningful research as Marina did. So we'll ask Marina and our colleagues to do maybe some kind of research into the youth issues in the future, if it hasn't been highlighted in the research you already mentioned. But we see that the issue of disconnectedness within the young people with themselves, first of all, right, not understanding who they are at all. I'm not talking about specific people, but on average. So we started with this Future Leaders program about a year ago. Well, started many years ago, but intensely we worked with Ukrainian-speaking young people, and we had about 1,100 of them in the program over the last year, and with Russian-speaking young people from many different countries, and we had about 3,000 of them in the program over the last year. And we learned that, number one, it's very difficult for them to connect to other people. Oh, do you hear my daughter? No? Иди сюда. Come here. Come here. She's trying to connect with her mother. Just a second. Come here. Иди сюда. Oh, okay. I have small kids running around, so let me care about her for a second. Alexander,
Lev is modeling connection for us.
could you guide us for a minute, and I'll be back.
Just well, isn't this about a connection? Exactly what you're saying, Matt, and about human care. It's about, there, look at this. There we got on the screen. Oh, that's definitely needed there, the human care. So that's so nice. Hello. Well, and I think this is really what we're also talking about here. Leadership is not an act. Many people do it as a performative art, but it's about being, interbeing. Bioacumulate talks about intra-being. And this, I think, Patty, you were getting to that as well earlier on. So these are beautiful, beautiful expressions. I did want to connect one thing, Lev, that you said earlier about living in a VUCA. You mentioned these terms, VUCA, BANI, and RUPT. And I'm just going to mention these, and I know you're coming right back, Lev. So I'll mention these terms because you put them out there, and I wanted to get this for people as well. And they're just a bunch of words, but the fact that they exist now and didn't exist like 10 years ago is an expression of the kind of world we're living in and the chaos it is for many people to try to navigate in this kind of world. How do you lead your life in a world that is, here's what they stand for. VUCA, there's so many words, just words. VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Yeah, that's our world. BANI stands for brittle, anxious, nonlinear, and incomprehensible. Okay. And then RUPT stands for rapid, unpredictable, paradoxical, and tangled. So there's so many different ways of saying, how am I supposed to navigate in a world that is so chaotic? And I think what we're talking about here is by connecting, and we're bridging to the solutions here already, Lev, but this is the next thing, but we have to listen to Ferial first, but connecting and being human, right? And asking, what would nature do? I think this is Patty also brought this in as well. What would nature do? And being in those frames. Lev, back to you.
Thank you very much. You brought us into a whole new dimension of VUCA, BANI, and wrapped world. And thank you for accepting my circumstances. I felt very vulnerable, having my younger daughter sort of crying at the door, but we found her mother, my wife, and all is good. So completing this topic of youth, so working with youth in a quite an intense way, in Ukraine, which is of course under the terrible war conditions, in Russian-speaking world throughout different countries, etc., we realize that regardless of their nationality and sort of external conditions, all young people, and we work with age from, let's say, 13, 14 to 25, pretty much, they have those issues. They're incapable to connect to themselves, not because they don't have this inner capacity, of course, but because the external circumstances don't support this inner connection. So Robert spoke about mind and heart connection. Marina spoke about the soul of the city, but of course also the soul dimension in each one of us personally. And we could talk about the soul of Gaia, right? The planetary soul and all of those aspects. So this is one thing, the inner disconnection. Young people definitely have it big time. And we'll talk about how our specific programs could help them create this connection. Also, they have difficulties, and we all know it. I mean, most likely we all went through it when we were younger. They have difficulties connecting to each other, even within one, nationality, one culture, one city, etc. It's just the issues of quote unquote ego, right? Fragility of our self-perception, not enough, groundedness and having a positive self-image, etc. And Marina, who worked for many years as a, please correct me if I misname it, but is it individual image marketing, or what was the right name for this area?
Yes, it was personal, so working with the personal perceptions and personal branding through learning your predestinations.
Exactly. So we see that young people need it, right? Because they can't understand themselves. It doesn't allow them to connect better to other people. And then feeling disconnected inside and in the society, in the peer group, the different, elder generations, they feel totally disconnected from the world. So I hear some beautiful stories about young people caring about the planet. Yes, it exists. But there are so many young people who don't feel connected with the planet and the environment. And if we don't bring this connectedness and awareness in the younger generations, and I think it's our sort of both, responsibility, and we have the capacity to do so, we will have future generations fully disconnected from the planet. And I'll mention one thing before going to Ferial. Today I read the research, and it's called, people with PhDs will correct me, but it was called in English consensual agreement of different, scientists, researchers, that in the 21st century, talking about the issues and challenges we really face, the probability of full extinction, full existential extinction of humanity in 21st century is 16% by consensus of people who studied sort of scientifically. That's quite a lot. That's whole of humanity, 100%. And then the consensual estimate of catastrophic events in human sort of civilization, and of course the whole planetary ecosystem where billions of people would disappear from the planet. Again, those are not fantasies, it's a pure research sort of magazine, was estimated at, I could check, but it was about 80% in the 21st century. So when I read those numbers, men and women, I was shocked. I didn't think that it's so high. And so, Ferial, now let me dive into the, of course, ask you, you could talk about many dimensions, but if you could sort of focus, because you worked in communities in different countries and continents, what do you feel is the current state of affairs with different communities? How are they doing? Are they the force for good? Are they capable of creating a better life on the planet? What's your perception there?
Thank you so much, Lev, for setting that up for me and for all the other colleagues. So I find myself in a privileged position within the panel because I get to draw from everything that you guys have already shared, which has been so brilliant and amazing from all these different perspectives. And really, for me, I'd like to start by going a little bit back, not actually just diving straight into, what communities are doing, but really understanding community itself. So for me, at the root of this word community, so the root word in the Latin is communis, right? That which is shared, that which is common to us, and that which is held in mutual care between all of us. So if we are, many of us have spoken, you've just given us some staggering numbers. Now, we could get very afraid. We could go, oh my gosh, we need to respond because we're going to die and things are going to happen. Here, we could do all of that. Or we could ask ourselves, what is it that is required from us in this moment to be responsive to the call that is coming clearly to us for this better future that we are desiring to live into? A future where the numbers look very differently to what you've just shared, Lev. And for me, it would be a kind of leadership that we must return to, which is this kind of thinking about it epistemologically and also an energetic essence, I would say, of returning, not returning from this kind of nostalgic space of just what was it in the past, what were we, I don't think it's about returning to what we were. It is about taking in what we've been, where we've come from, what is in front of us right now, as well as where we head to the future. It's holding all of those with this kind of beautiful transmutation, I want to say, through lived wisdom. And this does mean going back to things like what Patty said, train as humans, right? And it's so interesting for me. So just again, thinking about what all of you had shared. Now, all of you had shared these amazing insights. Now, I could be sitting over here just thinking about, I just want to make this practical, right? Where I could just be thinking about, what am I supposed to respond to? My question, right? Or I could be going, wow, look at what they share. Look at what I could learn from this. And now comes in Alexander's, I think you spoke about joint optimization, right? How do I optimize what you have shared into a learning that takes us on a whole other level? So in other words, for me, I think this is where the challenge is here for us, is that we are so embedded. And one of you mentioned this before, in our own personal expression. And there's a reason we are, right? We like, and I think, Patty, you mentioned the ego and a bunch of stuff, right? How am I going to live? How am I going to have a name for myself? And how am I going to be recognized? Because there is something within you and me that wants to be seen. We cannot ignore this. So there's something about that acknowledgement of the you, of the personal, that plays into that common community space, right? But how can we manage that better as a community? Because at the moment, we're just like all fighting for the mic, right? And it is causing dramas everywhere, because there is some questions, I think, as a society, we have to answer for ourselves. And it is things like, what do we celebrate? Somebody mentioned the incentives. I don't know if it was Alexander or someone that mentioned the incentives that we are putting out there as a society, which is what we are now responding to, because the incentives, the things that make us get recognized are not necessarily things that are promoting that joint optimization. And so we're clamoring, right? And so I think there are questions like, who do we celebrate? Are we celebrating the ones that are doing the clamoring at any cost? And so why would it then be that I would then not do the same? Because, hey, they're being celebrated over there, and me in my little corner trying to be the good human being, nobody's seeing me. And then there's things like, what do we prioritize? Things like we ask questions about how do we define prosperity as a community? Because these are all the ways in which we then respond as individuals and as a culture, because these are the things that when they're out there, this determines how we are acting and how we're creating then a culture that is shared by all of us. And the thing about it is that we're feeling it when you speak with anybody. I mean, Marina's kind of data that she's gotten through her survey, and many of the rest of us here have spoken to people out there, or just even being a human being alive on this planet today, you realize there's disconnection. There is, I don't like it, but why do I continue to be part of it? Why do I continue to still clamor? And I speak of this only because I speak of my own self and my own shadows and my own things that I see coming up all the time. And I have to address that. So my other colleagues here mentioned about, having to do your own interpersonal work. And Lev, I don't think that as a society we can actually move forward with our community development unless we have a deep personal commitment to that work. So I want to come back to when we've been in Switzerland and we were dealing with this really important issue. So many of the people in the Zoom room here were present with me there. And it was special because there was some really hard stuff we had to work through. There were tears, there were invisible observers that showed up. There were all kinds of things. And I just kind of want to be real here, because here's an organization of people leading, this global work, and we're struggling with some of this stuff. But Cretan, you and I had this conversation on the way to the airport from, and he kept saying to me, but that's why I want to work with you guys, not because you were great and you were, all of your programs are together or you've got everything waxed, because there's a whole bunch of things you need to deal with there, but how you showed up as human beings for each other. And I'm not talking about perfection, because there were moments we were not perfect, right? I'm talking about that deep commitment, because the people in that room had done some of that inner work. So I want to say, as a community, if we are to genuinely move into that communis, into that thing which takes us into what the future is really asking for, the kind of leadership, the kind of human beings, the kind of care, the kind of passion and compassion for one another, then I think that is really where it starts, in that room with those people, and being on the mat. In my conversation with Patty, often she's saying being on the mat. And I think that would be my call to everyone, Lev, here in this room and out there listening, is to say, how do we authentically, deeply authentically, I want to show up for ourselves, in the sense of the thing that Peter said. How do we show up for our own call, for that thing which we bring, right? So I want to say from our essence. And then I also want to say, then how do we create the conditions, what he said, for others to do so? And I think it is really there. It is in that space that you create that. And from there, I think it spills over, and it becomes, so we could do that collectively because the individuals had done it individually. And so I say, for a community to move forward in this moment, as the community and as the leaders, that the world needs and wants right now, the ones that Alexander said we've been waiting for, we are those ones. Are we prepared to put in that work? And there's the other thing, when we study to be nurses and doctors and all these fancy whatever title people, we put in years of energy into that. But somehow we think that to truly be those humans with the kind of proficiencies that can human really well, that's just going to come. No, it's work. And I think it's time we acknowledge that. And it's time that we actually put our money where our mouths are and invest into our development as human beings, so that we can show up for one another and for ourselves and for the earth. Thank you.
Thank you, Ferial. Oh, that's that's been quite a journey, right? Almost 1 hour and a half. If somebody needs to take a, bio break, feel free to leave for a couple of minutes. In 2 minutes, I will pass it on to Alexander. And now, as we take, a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, some water, do some other things before we continue for the last half an hour of our conversation today, and we'll have, as far as I understand, so we'll go for a keynote presentation from Alexander on evolutionary leadership, right? How do we move into from ego to eco and caring about the planet, each other, and ourselves? And then we'll go around of quote unquote solutions and ideas. Okay, what the future leadership look like? So we'll go through the same circle of speakers, and we'll finalize with some specific suggestions what each one of us can do this year to support, young leaders worldwide, mature leaders, and of course some final comments from Violetta and maybe a couple of Q&As. So while we have this small break, I will continue talking, and I want to bring up one issue which I observed in communities dimension since I started. So I was in the corporate world for many years until 2000, let's say 10. And the last 15 years, I'm more on the nonprofit side. And what I noticed, and it was our learning working with the cities, and one of my colleagues brought up before I even realized it. And Violetta, for example, who worked in a, let's call it on a government level, right? You saw national government, European sort of commission, how it's organized. I don't know from the inside, but I guess it runs more or less like a machine with perhaps some own, challenges. But then as we look at the citizens, citizen action networks, communities, what I observed is the level of complexity, the quality of organization, ability to create impact is very often uncomparable between corporations, governments on one side, and citizens, action networks, communities on the other side. Many of us are very well-intended, kind-hearted. We might even have connection between our minds and our heart and our soul. But the quality of organizations, right, might be a little bit behind. Not all of them. There are some wonderful examples, impact hubs, Ashokas, maybe some others, I'm sure many others. But also, in most cases, when people start their own initiatives, start their local communities, intentional communities, we observe some oldest communities on Earth, like eco-intentional communities, Findhorn, for example, where Marilyn Hamilton and Lorraine are both residing. We see that there are a lot of challenges on the interpersonal organizational level. So before we move, and we'll talk about it in the solutions and future leadership, but I want to bring this issue, right? So communities come together to solve problems, but very often they don't have enough, call it co-creation capacity or leadership or distributed leadership capacity to be at par, right? To be capable to solve issues they want to face. And before passing to Alexander in 1 minute, Violetta, if I could kindly ask you, because you have experience, definitely not me, and maybe none of us has. So from your government work and then working with distributed communities, how do you compare, the effectiveness of those systems? And if you could highlight a couple of those challenges, if there are any.
Well, I already responded to your challenge. I was not expecting to speak, but what I'd like to quickly reflect is that somebody said that maybe individuals are not strong enough or they're not enough to make a change or, really deliver what they feel inside that they can. I would rather argue opposite. Actually, within every structure and machine, as you called it, Lev, I found always a lot of space, to deliver really, truly who you are, what you believe in. And it's relatively easy to go and deliver that within current political structures, because people are eager to collaborate, people are eager to be recognized, people are eager to be able to actually deliver what they're good at. Unfortunately, there is not enough leader who would claim that power. There are just few. I was a complete inexperienced politician. I could deliver whatever we decided to deliver. It was really, the limit was our imagination. because we use participatory modeling, we use the collective participation and engagement. And I mean, it's unbelievable how much you can do. But there are only few who would claim that space. There are only few who would actually listen to people and empower themselves through the power of people. And I still don't understand why, because it's a wonderful feeling, and they're great deliverables. So you maybe can help me to answer that. You know, even though I was one of those courageous leaders, I experienced that. I could not find too many of those. So most of the people who are put in those positions, they want to comply with the structures, the rules, the expectations, and there's so many self-regulated. There is no rules, but they think that they should, and they do. Yeah. So what can we do in order not to behave like that? And of course, because if once you are on your own, you know, they look at you as a weirdo, and even though you deliver really recognizable results, you're not welcome, because all of a sudden you make other people feel underachievers, instead of them realizing that if somebody who's such an outsider as I was can deliver so much, how much more they could, you know, having skills about the systems, understanding how they work. So where are we failing? This is my open question. I don't know the answer yet.
We'll go in a second to Alexander, who will talk exactly about the leadership
But
and
thank you
leading.
for raising the question.
But also before, Alexander, as you prepare with your presentation, with your slides, before our Zoom call started today, I spoke with Violetta about our Global Mayors Academy, and we created it exactly for this reason. We want to support people in leadership positions in local, regional, etc. governments, as well as business and non-profit impact community space, to really get this sense of agency Violetta spoke about. So we are the creators of our reality, right? Not the victims of the circumstances. And Alexander, I think it's a great, way to pass it on to you, because I saw a couple of your slides and they, speak exactly, they address this very issue of how we move to more evolutionary leaders on our planet. Alexander, on to you. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. Yes, and definitely I can take the weirdo option and hat here, because I'm good with that. But I also want to tie this directly into what Violetta was saying and what Ferial was saying before that. It's not to dream the impossible dream. It's to dream the possible dream. But that dream, this is a collective dream now. We all would like to have a future that's livable. We all would like to have a world that works for all. So what are we going to do about it? And I think this is where the leadership really comes in. I love the quote from George Bernard Shaw. He says, "You see things as they are and ask why. But I dream of things that never were and ask why not." See, this is the spirit. I think dreaming of things that could be, right? And just to tie this also directly into something that, and then I'll share just a few very brief slides to really stimulate our thinking about this transition into action. I don't know about solutions, but into action, engagement, and building on the things that we have, the Future Leaders Program and the Global Mayors Academy. So there are some things that are right in there. But how does this relate? Let me connect it, though, with something Fergal was saying, because it reminded me of the idea that we often say, oh, we're doing this for future generations. We're doing this for the future. And sometimes if we have young people here, like Crichton, I'm kidding, sorry, Crichton, don't want to pick on you. And we say, yeah, because they are the future. But they're the present. We are here now. I think this is Ferial, what you're getting at as well. It's not about we're doing this for the future. We need to be doing this for now. And in a way, I like the birthing metaphor. And I, as a man, I feel sometimes like I'm doing cultural appropriation when I say this, but it really makes sense to me that there's a triple birthing going on right now. And this is what I'll present in just a moment. But simultaneously, we are midwifing a new time into existence. It's not new, it's a remembering as well, as we were saying at the very beginning. It's things that we know how to live in relationship with each other, with the living world, right? So it's a remembering. So that's being the midwives of a world that is coming into being. But at the same time, we're giving birth to a new world. We are its co-creators. So we have to be giving birth at the same time as we're midwifing that which is coming into existence. But the third part is very important. We are also that which is being born. So we're simultaneously midwifing, giving birth to, and being the world we want to see. And that's a very important last part, because often we're like, oh, we're doing this for a future generation. No, we have to live and embody and engage with what it is that we are wanting to see in the world. So I'm going to just share a few ideas and slides about this. And as we go over to here we are, go here, and there we are. And then that. Okay, so I want to share with you some ideas on what I call evolutionary leadership, but really it comes down to this essence that we've been talking about a lot here, of what is what constitutes the capacities for being a future leader. And one of these things is this idea, we're often in this kind of situation where we're put in a leadership position, or we're just even have to facilitate a small group, and we're expected to be taking people someplace. Yeah, and yet we have no idea exactly what we should be doing. Like this poor dog here, right? I can't smell a damn thing, right? But so how do we live into this space, right? And how do we take ourselves and each other on a meaningful journey, right? Again, this is this systems perspective that I want to share with you. So first of all, a little bit, again, these are meant to stimulate our thinking about what is this evolutionary role. So what is evolutionary leadership? So first of all, it is conceived as the form of leadership that is required for successful sustainability management in an evolutionary context. And this comes to something that Patty was saying, and it's not just about she typed in the chat. It's going beyond survival, right? It means for moving from survival to sustaining, living within the carrying capacity of our environment, of our ecosystems. But beyond that, it also means moving into thrival. How can we create flourishing domains, right? So evolutionary leadership is a call for stewards of people, organizations, communities, and ecosystems to facilitate the emergence of thrivable societies in flourishing bioregions. So this is something that we were talking about early on, and Marina also emphasized this about the perspectives. And many of us were talking about connection. So these are key aspects of evolutionary leadership. What is the purpose? So, and these are just, again, ideas we can talk about and bring this into how do we enact this? How do we embody this? How do we bring this into the world together to facilitate the conscious cultural evolution of a democratic, socially just, learning-oriented, spiritually fulfilling, and ecologically sustainable global society? It's a lot, but it needs to have all these things in interaction, right? It's not just, let's focus on one thing at a time. We can focus, but we need to foreground and background these various things as we engage. We can't just focus only on one dimension. It's all interconnected. So evolutionary leadership is based on a new worldview that integrates the biological, ecological, and social dimensions of life in service of ways to human well together, right? And this is what Dumi was also mentioning in the chat. We need the hub and we are the hub for learning how to human better, be more human, right? What does that mean? So what are some of the competencies? So here I want to just put these on the table, some things that we might want to think about. Who has to know how to read the patterns of change? Well, that first of all means listening. Reading and listening are different metaphors for being aware of the change that is happening to us, through us, around us, engaging in that. We are also the patterns. Understanding the key challenges of the 21st century. So when we talk about the VUCA, Bani, RUPT, Tuna, all these other frames, what are they? What are the challenges to us, right? And then we can think about the responses, which we're going to get to now in the second part here. So we can comprehend global problems from an evolutionary and systems perspective. This idea that we want to get to sustainability, we want to get to an endpoint, we want to fix things, we want to get to the sustainable society, that's problematic because it's a journey and it'll always be changing, always evolving. We'll never get to, oh, now this is the fixed answer of the society. Here it is. We do it like this. So always being in flow is a key aspect of the competency of an evolutionary leader. We're committed to social, environmental, and economic justice, key aspect of equity, and incorporates ancient and contemporary wisdom from indigenous societies in connection with land and the rhythms of nature. And I know Patty doesn't get this at all, so I'll explain it to her later. But this is the idea. I'm kidding, because Patty's a big leader on this. But this is, I think, very key, because it's not just about reinventing the wheel or being so smart as Homo sapiens sapiens that we're going to come up with a new way. It's remembering, bringing that membership back into, and Matt and Ferial and Marina and many of us will be talking about this remembering, right? Okay, what are some practices? And now we're getting a little bit into the solution things here. The personal practices. First of all, get out of your own way. So these are things I tell myself. How am I standing in my way or in the way of others to be able to move things forward? Because what? My ego, my presence, my solutions, I have the ideas. Okay, get out of your own way. Connect. Sense into what is seeking to emerge. And this idea again of sensing into, when you're in a VUCA dynamic, trying to make sense of everything in terms of rational, it's too much. But being part of the flow and seeing where's the light? How can I move towards the light? And there's the flow, aligning with the pulse of change that is life affirming, future creating, and opportunity increasing for everyone, not opportunity increasing for yourself only, but not only for everyone, but for all beings. And not only for all beings here and now, but also for all future beings, right? How can we do what John Ehrenfeld talks about sustainability as the potential for life to flourish on Earth indefinitely? That's radical sustainability and flourishing, really. And this is the idea that we don't need to wait. A quote from Joanna Macy, who's a fantastic inspirational leader in this, who passed away just recently. She says, because the relationship between self and world is reciprocal, it is not a matter of first getting enlightened or saved and then acting. As we work to heal the earth heals us. No one need wait. So with that inspiration from Joanna Macy, I will leave you just with this admonition to be the systems you want to see in the world. And you know I love this framing because it means first that you need to be you in the world. That's key. But also you have to listen with your heart, with all of your being, because the systems want to see, the living systems, the future systems, the future generations of all things want to see this world thrive. How can we be the stewards and the curators of this beautiful possibility? And with that, I stop my sharing.
Wow.
And we're back.
Alexander, it's amazing, but you are a great weaver. You brought us from the challenges and issues we all face on different levels and dimensions into some of the steps we could take, and I felt very empowered, right? Because the sheer scale of challenges sometimes overwhelms our psyche, and we say, okay, we don't care about the world or the community, the city we're living in. Let me take care of myself first, right? And maybe it's the last thing a person does for the rest of his life or her life. But you give us a lot of hope, and all the other speakers who spoke about those issues, It's how we can do things rather than thinking about what we cannot do, right? And feeling empowered to move forward. So with this in mind, as we move towards completion of our session in 15, maybe 20 minutes, I would like to ask each of the speakers, and thank you again for sharing your time today and your wisdom and your knowledge. But let's try to move around the sort of room, and I'll pass it on first to Paddy, who was the first one, I believe, last time, and then we'll go through the rest of the circle. I would love to hear one thing, if you want to, but try to focus on one thing from your perspective. And let's say that each one could be a leader, right, in his or her own way. We're not talking about formal leadership. We're talking about us creating reality together with other people, right? Co-creation and all those beautiful aspects. So from your perspective, what is the aspect of our, life we could change, what we could be, what we can do, what we could think of in order to create a more sustainable, thriving, fair, etc., sustainable, regenerative world? Paddy, let me start with you, not because you're in the tip of Africa, southern tip, but because you have wealth of knowledge, experience. You see people in business, government, local communities dealing with those challenges. So what's your observation, advice, and solution, so to say?
Sure. Big question to have one answer for that. I love the self and the world are reciprocal, so I am speaking from that place. It's not just through the self. I'm very aware that the self is the extension or the reflection of whatever else touches us, from the cells, from nature, from our environment, from the energy. Whoops, you just slid down my my stand. The thing that I'm feeling pulsing through me at the moment, besides the fact that actually we are talking about what is it that we need to be or cultivate, whereas we are actually it already. We are it. We're not talking about something that is. We are doing the living practices. We are managing these conversations that are difficult and having the ones that inspire. We are actually walking the talk. And part of our training, with any other training, is to help people manage the difficulty, that tension, when the whole self wants to go back into a familiar, not always useful way, but the familiar way, which has been easier, and encourage that movement across that threshold. Talk about the birthing, talk about the midwifing, but it's the threshold of coming into the space of discomfort. And can we help people to hold that as they learn to become more of their true self, the self that is connected, rather than the self that keeps disconnecting? One thing.
Thank you. We gracefully take it in, and let me pass it on to Robert on his journey. Robert, what would be one thing you would like to highlight now?
Well, what pops up in me is maybe not so different from what Paddy said and Alexander and many others. For me, it's a challenge often when I have a moment where I feel deeply, okay, this comes from deep inside me, and this I would like to do. And then all the resistances can pop up. And to breathe a few times and to observe what happens in me. Maybe it's truth popping up, and all the obstacles too can pop up. And just breathe deeply and let the obstacles pass by, and take the courage and just go for it.
Wow. I wrote in our chat, lead, serve, and breathe through it all. Breathe through it all. Thank you. Thank you, Robert. Let me see. Matt, if I could ask you, and Kriton would be next, what is your observation or...
Sure. Thank you. I did some humming in between to try and get my voice back, but I'm not sure it worked. Yeah, well, I think it's about not expecting somebody else to solve our problems, not waiting for the hero to come, who we give our power away to, the power that we would actually be able to utilize to solve our problems, to share with others, not struggle, not when we let go of the ego, then we move from the power struggle to power sharing, and then that power can grow. That's when we can make changes. And sometimes it's uncomfortable. It doesn't have to be scarily uncomfortable. We just take one step at a time out into that zone of discomfort until we get comfortable with it, and then we move a little further.
One step at a time. Greeting, how it works for you, and then we'll go to Marina.
Yeah, first of all, like, I think that if we want to bring change, we have to understand that we bring the old and the new within us every minute. We carry that. We carry the worst of humanity and the best of humanity inside us. And that means that we're not to point the finger to others, to the trumps of this world exactly, and say, look what you are. Because for sure we do carry a small trump inside us, hidden inside us. So what we can do, though, is we can tune in with the new, tune in with the harmonious, and try to be the new, be the positive, be the adding in the everyday, in our everyday lives. Always take the brick and put another brick on the beautiful wall, on the wall that helps nature, not on the one that extracts it. So that's it, with a lot of humbleness and creating, as Ferial said, conditions also for others to do that. That's important. The freedoms we got to act, we got them because some other people acted. So humbleness, openness to the new, and collaborative action. That's it, I think.
Thank you, Greeting. Evcharisto, Marina, and then we'll go to Peter.
I would suggest maybe 3 states of being, which can be connected into one ultimately. So first of all, I would suggest all of us to consider being the weavers who balance taking and giving, which is about taking care of ourselves, but at the same time balance it with taking care of others and the environment around us. I would suggest us to balance between doing and making actions, and thinking and feeling in terms of being cautious about what is inside us, so be balancing our internal and external worlds. I also suggest us to balance individual and collective, and think not only from our own perspective, but from the perspective of bigger systems to which we belong. And in this case, this self-identification, which we mentioned, of being a person and identifying myself as a person, but also identifying myself as people, which is, for example, the wisdom of Ubuntu says us, I am because we are. So we identify ourselves not only with myself, but also with the bigger community, and also identify ourselves with places and planet, because places are sort of the land which nourishes us, which gives us food, which gives us water. And once we are 70% of water, we are 70% the land, the soil, and the water in the place where we live. And of course, planet, because we all are the cells of the big organism, which is called Mother Earth, or Mother Gaia, as you like it. And at last, the metaphor of being the soil, the leader as a soil, which nourishes, which gives space, which gives nutrition, which gives everything that creates the conditions and environment for communities and for people whom we nurture. It's not about maybe leadership, it's mostly about creation the space, followership, as Alexander mentioned once a little bit earlier. So, and to sum up, maybe the connection for me is the synonym of love. So if we consider ourselves to be love, we will be nourishing, we will be weavers, we will be the fertile soil for others and for the planet itself. And we will be us. Maybe we will be the ones with the purpose for which we were born.
Wow, I loved it. I wrote the 70% and I added that we are 100% Mother Earth, Gaia, and the Stardust in addition to this. Thank you very much, Marina. And now we're going to Peter, and I think Ferial would be the concluding with some concluding remarks. Alexander, is it okay that I don't come back to you since you started the circle in a way with your beautiful slides? And Peter, if I could kindly ask you not only to mention the observation, insight, or advice, but also how the specific programs you are working on right now with the team, the future leaders, how it could be one of the responses to building the thriving futures for all of our planet. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lev. Yeah, I think the one thing that I would like to add is, as a metaphor almost of leadership, is translating, because everything, like Alexander said, it starts with listening, or you can call it reading, you can call it seeing, you can call it sensing, you can call it perceiving, but like at least like being open to, what's coming to you. And I think one of the challenges that we haven't like spoken of so much, that people live in different narratives or different worldviews. So one of the things you can do with what you hear or see is like translate it into action for yourself. But maybe you are able to translate something one person said into a language that someone else understands, or like in that way, like you can see leadership as like making sure that people have the information they need to do what they need to do. One example of that translation, I think, is what we're doing with the Future Leaders Project, is trying to translate all the wisdom that exists in like communities like we're in now, and translate that into a program that is accessible for young people between 15 and 26, where they learn all the stuff that they don't learn at school, but it is so important. So, where you learn how to see the world around you and how to understand the world around you, how to think about it as systems, how to even think about the future, and how to listen to that, how to make sense of it, but also how to, discover your unique self and like connect back to yourself, and from there, like be able to do things in the world, but also how to connect to others, how to relate to others, how to work together, and how to bring that into action, without forgetting that like the systems and the structures that they didn't create but like are born into, are extremely important, and in the sense that some people have a lot more privileges than others. So we shouldn't forget like that all of this, we can ask for young people to step up as leaders, but if we don't give them a chance or to do that, then so just not forget that, but really think about how to see the world, how to connect with yourself, how to connect with each other, and how to take action from that perspective. And this is a course not only for young people, but also we have a special track for parents and educators, because everything is interconnected. The way children connect, or young people connect with their parents, with their educators. So if, for example, if you're an educator, you can join that program, but you can also, or as a parent, you can start a learning circle so that young people can learn together. So we have like different ways to engage with that. You can find more information about the program on futureleaders.info. That's also where you can connect. And most of all, like anyone who's listening to this, you can become an ambassador, let's say, for that program to help bring that program into your communities, into schools, into cities. So this is explicitly an invitation to everyone who's listening to this. If you feel any resonance with this, please look us up on the website and get in touch.
Thank you very much, Peter. I would like to highlight one thing and then pass it on to Ferial to complete our circle, and then to Violetta to complete our whole session. What Peter mentioned, this program Future Leaders, the big idea behind it, and we do it several organizations together, Eco-Civilization, Living Cities Earth, Laszlo Institute for New Paradigm Research, Learning Planet Alliance, Integral City, the Hague Center for Global Governance, and several others. So those organizations and communities came together with one specific mission in this program, to give access to each teenager, right, on our planet through schools, social networks, etc., access to most important skills, knowledge, worldview, and support system to become creators of our future thriving life. And the reason we decided to focus on young people, for two reasons. They will hold the planet into the future. And equally important is that we understand that through school systems and cities worldwide, we can really reach each young person. Basically, we are talking to the future generations. So if you feel interested to be part of this global process, please connect with us. Maybe I'll ask Ferial later on to name the website again. But really, it was a very inspiring connection today, very human, very sort of global at the same time, and all those different perspectives. So Ferial, if you could kindly complete our circle, invite us into collaboration to build this thriving future, and then we'll pass it on to Violetta to complete our beautiful session today. Ferial? We don't hear you.
Yes, I got it. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lev. So you asked us to mention one thing. So I'm going to take us back to do what is yours to do and create the conditions for others to do the same. Now, by this, I mean the first part, do what is yours. Do it from essence. What absolutely wants to flow through you. You cannot stop it. It wants to come, right? That is the thing you should be bringing to the world. And it sounds something like what Howard Thurman writes about when he says, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do that, right? So the second part of it is, how do you create these conditions for others to do the same? Well, I ended earlier saying, well, invest in empowering yourself with the inner and outer tools that give you these capabilities. So with that said, Living Cities Earth, we don't want to be these hypocrites, right? That say, oh, you've got to invest into this. And then what we're doing is we're not putting our money where our mouths are. So a lot of the programs that we are creating right now or have created and are creating are exactly about this. How do we help you become empowered? And I get to work with these incredible people that are on the Zoom at the moment every day. So I get to hear this stuff every day. So I'm speaking from this privileged position, right? As Peter had said, instead of, okay, there are other humans who don't have this access. So how do we give that? So firstly, our Future Leaders program, they've both Lev and Peter has spoken a lot about that. So I'm not going to go too much into that. I'm just going to say that you can find most of the information you need on how to be an ambassador, how to register yourself, how to encourage your community to get involved, because really it is a project that we designed so that the whole community gets involved. A young person does not develop in isolation, in a silo. They develop in the ground, the fertile ground, hopefully, of their community. So futureleaders.info is where you want to be going to. I will post it in the chat. We also have other programs like the Global Mayors Academy that Lev mentioned earlier, that is in development right now, and it's going to be available to you if you're a city leader or you're someone aspiring to be part of a city administration or whatever. We want to be able to provide you with the kind of thinking and paradigm stuff in the inner work and all of that kind of stuff that you have heard about today. So that it's not just theory, but you can actually take that and make it really super practical in your own life. As I said earlier, get onto the mat with the tools, right? And then there is other aspects like our city transformational consultancy that we offer, together with groundbreaking I want to say information and knowledge that we've been working with Dr. Patty Pampoulis on, actually, where she's really helping us to get on that mat with integral leadership knowledge, practices that she has been honing with a team across almost 3 decades of work. So she and her team are definitely people that we want to be learning from. So we're going to be packaging a lot of her materials together with that of many of our other co-founders into offerings that would hopefully really help you. So with that, I say thank you very much. Thank you for having me, Lev. I will post some stuff into the chat where others can connect.
Thank you, Violeta. Thank you for hosting this beautiful discussion, and to the whole team of Eco-Civilization. It's been both a challenge, but a great pleasure to be part of this journey. On to you. Thank you very much.
Well, not much to add, except that I'm deeply convinced that a hidden change is happening. Maybe 2-3 years ago, we were shy in using new vocabulary. Today is there, present in the mainstream, in the main flow. And that is a great start, because a couple of years ago, it was hard to express yourself, the way how we felt, the way how we wanted to see the future or even co-create it. Today, this language is rich. It's emerging, is constantly offering new things. And that's why, again, thank you to Living Cities Earth for collaboration, because only together we can create a critical mass and of change, or conditions that the change can emerge. Another thing that I got today inspired by is that sometimes it's good to pause, not rush too fast. And I would put out again an invitation. We have over 360 different leadership schools around the world, thousands and thousands of leadership courses. And what is happening right now, that almost every one of us is part of a different leadership, emerging leadership course. How can we, this is a question maybe for the ongoing discussion. I'm part of like 3 academies emerging right now, and I don't like that either. And I'm constantly inviting everyone, let's pause for a second. Let's see what is really needed and not rush too fast. And yet we do. But it gives me a comfort, again, based on today's discussions, that we also, as, let's say, those that already try to lead from within, try to listen to our inner voices, also understand that we got to listen more. And I think that was one of the messages as well in the comment. Listening is a powerful tool. And if we want to be the change we want to see, then I think this is one of the qualities I will start more emphasizing over and over again. And through the listening, deep listening, as they say, deep listening, the intuitive listening, I think we will finally feel the connections and the networks emerging, and they will come together without a power struggle, without who's going to be first, without up and down. But what Alexander said, there is no up and down in the universe. It's just this network of emergence that is happening and is empowering all of us. And maybe just there is the secret of this new emerging leadership. So I would be very honored to continue discussions, and also then at one point focus on tools that can actually support this kind of emergence, this kind of educational program or learning and listening programs, because all tools kill the idea in its infancy. So that's our next maybe challenge. But as I said, so much has happened in the last couple of years, and that gives me a real enormous pleasure, and every energy and resource invested in holding space for eco-civilization and dialogues like this has been way over rewarded. So thank you all, guys, and I'm very much looking forward to our next step. wherever that's going to lead. We'll see. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who was part of. I mean, the group stayed, even though we are late, but the group, the participants, the attendees stayed, and the comments were excellent. Thank you for all the comments. As it was said, we have saved them all. And I will share with all of you that registered, not only with the speakers, but I will share the comments with everyone who was present today. Because as you said, a lot's been said, but equally enormously rich comments have been recorded as a reflection to our discussion. So thank you all. Have a lovely day, night, whatever it's ahead of you. Love each other. I would love to hug you now, all of you. This would have been such a powerful one, but I'll just send a virtual hug and love to all of you. Thank you again. See you soon.
Thank you, Violeta.
Bye-bye.
Bye.